Thank you, Martin, for being here.
Hey, glad to be here.
So you're in Paris for 2 days only?
Yeah, this time for 2 days.
And why?
I came for meeting educational projects, which is also one of my passions besides building Bolt. Yeah, you have a great school of 42, which is training talent for different IT and programming jobs. And we were considering building some similar school to Estonia. So we were coming here to learn more about that concept.
Cool. So you're taking some inspiration from 42 school. So you are really hands-on. Huh? You are really involved in the local tech scene in Estonia. It's not only about your own startup, it's also about building an ecosystem. Maybe we can start with that. What do you do? I've heard of Garage48 and other initiatives.
So yeah, I've been entrepreneur actually more than 20 years now. So I started my first company during university, first course in '97, long time ago. And actually it happened so that in 2 years time I managed to sell the company. It was a web design company and my friends did the first portal of Estonia, like Yahoo was the first generic portal. It was 97, 98. And then it was acquired in 99 during the first internet bubble. So it was, of course, a small acquisition, probably whatever, less than $500,000. But for a university graduate, it was, it was pretty still good experience. So in second course in university, I became a director of the listed company who bought our whatever, startup wasn't invented that term, but it was just a tech company during that time. So yeah, so 2 years I worked in this listed company and then it went bankrupt because the main business that they wanted to turn around, it didn't go so well and the banks declared it in bankrupt 2001. So the bubble burst, the company went bankrupt. So it was a good experience or valuable experience for me.
And after that, you understood how it was important to be helped by other mentors, for instance, and that's why you are so involved in the ecosystem, in the tech ecosystem.
So after that, I went to work for Tallinn Stock Exchange for 4 years, and then 2005 I joined Skype. I worked there 2 years, and then in 2 years Skype grew very fast from 50 people to 650, and I felt that it became too big on one hand, because we again became part of a listed company. eBay had bought Skype during that time. And secondly, I really wanted to do something on my own. So I quit Skype and founded an ex-startup with some of the colleagues. So we built that 1 year. But the challenge was like I was the only guy who actually were willing to quit a good job. All the other guys, 4 founders or 3 other founders, they remained in their well-paid jobs. They didn't want to take the risk. So we developed the company to a certain level. It's still working now, it's profitable, but it didn't reach the full potential. So, and then, I felt like that if the other guys are not joining in, I took another startup and few of them failed, few of them are still remained until then, 2013, we founded Bolt.
So at that time it wasn't called Bolt.
It was initially, first 6 months, it was called M-Taxo, which is like mobile taxi in Estonian language. Then when we needed to expand to Latvia, we renamed to Taxify. And then last year we renamed to Bolt. We have renamed 3 times. But yeah, if you want to go back to the community side, then yeah, during this kind of, after the Skype was a very, very good role model for the Estonian overall ecosystem. And on peak times, it probably hired like 600-700, probably the brightest people in Estonia. So they all got very valuable experience. So they got inspiration that Estonians can build global products that can disrupt markets. So Skype was really one of the big disruptors during that time, the whole telco market. Secondly, we got international network. Skype had at some point thousands of people all around the world, so you got a network. And thirdly, stock options, which was very valuable. So hundreds of people got income from the stock options, and they could then start their own companies or they could start investing in Estonian ecosystem. So I think this is mainly, I would say, why Skype was so important for kicking off Estonian ecosystem. And then 2009, we founded Estonian Startup Leaders Club. Initially, it was just 8 founders who was just, during that time, first startups. Some of them failed and so on. So we really felt that we need a support group. So we didn't have co-working spaces like everywhere now in Europe, but it was 10 years ago. So we felt that we need to keep together, meet at least once a month to share our worries and maybe even, I don't know, cry sometimes and ask how the others are handling their challenges and so on, and basically inventing together what is a startup, how to grow it and so on. And today it has now 110 members in 10 years time, and basically most Estonian top founders belong to the club. So we have a Slack channel and monthly meetups, and so I think that has been very valuable. And after that, 1 year later, the club was mostly for internal networking for founders, but we felt that we need to do something more widely, and then we started Garage48, which is the hackathon series. And they have been now, or we have been doing hackathons probably, I don't know, several hundred events in more than 30 markets.
I'm really insisting on that point because I'm sure it's part of the culture of Bolt as well, because we feel it that you think very local in every city that you go, and it comes from somewhere, and it comes from, I guess, this understanding of how it is important to really be rooted, be grounded in an ecosystem and be helped by other people and help each other, basically. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about the beginning of Bolt? Why did you started this company with your brother, by the way?
So, my brother was in high school during that time, and the first Garage48 event we did 2010, he was the youngest member there. So, and he even came with his father, or my father. So he had to accompany him because he was 16, and I don't know, somehow they felt that they come together. So he has been in these hackathons already a few years before we started, and he was constantly on lookout. So, okay, what's the good business idea? What we could do. So Markus built a mobile interface for that, like really student bottom up, what students would like to have there, built prototype, went to these guys and say that, would you like to integrate it, or let's figure up a cooperation model? And they were not really willing to. Then we went to talk to schools, but we saw that education seems very slow. Schools don't have much money, and it's difficult to scale fast. So we dropped that idea as well. And then 2012, I went to Garage48 hackathon in Kiev, and we needed to get from the hotel to the hackathon venue. And as in Eastern Europe, everywhere, you know that taxis are cheating a lot, and especially when you're a tourist, you have no clue how much the ride should cost. And the local guy said, we have a website that you can order a taxi. We said, whoa, what's that? So we tried that service, and it actually, I typed in the address in the web, and the car actually arrived. So I was really surprised. I haven't heard about the service like that. And then we went back to Estonia. I thought that, well, that's like a pretty good idea, that maybe we should do something like that in Estonia. And I discussed with Markus, and we started elaborating, and that's how we started.
And so when you started, you had already your experience as a serial entrepreneur, but you were tackling like a big market. So how did you grow? Like, what were the main stages? What was the very first focus, the first 6 months?
I mean, initially, of course, we didn't have plans to conquer the world. We thought that we start from Tallinn, which was a relatively small city, 400,000 people. But the problem was that we had 35 different taxi companies. And oftentimes, we had, let's say, 3,000 taxis, but they were split up after 35 dispatch centers. Everyone had small fleets. So the most common situation was you need a taxi, you call to one dispatcher, oh, sorry, no cars in your area. You call the second, the same problem. Often you call 5, 6 dispatchers, you don't get the car. People were really frustrated. So, and we were even classic guys. We even did a survey. We did a Google form survey. We sent it out. Markus sent it to his school list, and I sent it in social media. And we got 800 people answering the questions. So we did market survey, and people said, yes, it's a problem to get a taxi. They are not reliable. quality sucks, they cheat, all of that. So we even validated the problem before we started. And then we started building. We didn't have a technical co-founder at the start, so we used a freelancer guy to build the first prototype. We paid him like 4,000 or 5,000 euros, so I put half of the money. And
the very first prototype was exactly doing what?
Basically, yeah, the same kind of thing. The app for the driver, and then a simple app for the passenger and during that time, you could even, we just published you cars that are close by. So everyone could even pick whatever car they like. So some guys like, I don't know, Volvo cars, some like Skoda or so on. So we didn't even have automatic dispatching, but it was just like a directory initially, and the prices were very different as well. Each car had very different price. So customer could just see which cars are around him and pick the car and just order. That was the first prototype. So.
And the year at that moment was?
2013. So yeah, 2012 summer, I got the idea. Then we thought about it half a year. Then in spring, started building the prototype, and we launched in August 2013.
And at that time, your KPI, like what you wanted to grow, was?
Of course, first trouble was to get drivers on board. So we had to do a lot of sales in the city, just walking around, sitting in cars in the taxi stops and trying to convince them that, guys, we are building an app and maybe you want to join. Of course, most of them said that, get the heck out of my car. And
because?
Because they said that there were some guys who tried to do it earlier, like an SMS-based taxi service, and they failed, and you will fail again. You know nothing about taxis, and get out, I want to read my newspaper. So that was the common answer. So.
And who was the one who would trust you?
I don't know, if you know statistics, then in every group there is usually about 10% of like pioneers who are saying that, okay, I'll give it a try on the new service. So we just needed to go so many taxi drivers to get whatever these first 50, 60 drivers to say that, okay, I'll join. And then we said that, okay, in a month's time we get the app ready, and then we will call you and then log into the app.
Was the cash management an issue at the beginning? Like since the very first prototype, people would pay with...
It was all cash. We didn't have any electronic payments.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just ordering the cab, and drivers should pay for us for every successful ride. So it was no monthly fees. You just pay when you get a ride. So it was a very, very simple thing. Of course, we had debts. Drivers didn't pay us, and so all the common stuff when you start, but yeah, that was the initial model.
Okay, and as Uber has been like a model, or like, I mean, it's a competitor basically, but today. But how have you managed the growth of Uber? In the meantime, at the family we say benchmark are for losers. Okay, yeah. You don't have to compare yourself, but still, it's a good inspiration sometimes.
So yeah, when we started, we didn't know about Uber. Uber was a company in US. They didn't have any operations in Europe. I think roughly the same time when we launched in Tallinn, I think they launched in Paris. But again, Uber launched in Paris. It was not a big news, so we didn't consider them as competitor, even though. Maybe a good remark is, like, before we started building the prototype, we looked around what's happening in Europe, and there was one app in Greece, and there was one app in London and one in Germany. So we looked how these apps look like, and maybe we can learn something from that. And we wrote even to the Greek guys and asked them that maybe we can use their technology to become their partners in the Baltic states. And we even have the email, and they said that no. You can't. And then lucky us that they declined, so we built our own product. Otherwise, maybe we would have been like a branch manager of the Greek apps in the Baltics. And then that app was later bought by Daimler, bought them for 40 million like a few years back. So.
And Daimler invested also in Bolt,
yeah,
right?
Daimler is also our investor, but yeah, we were not for sale. So Daimler wanted to buy us, but we had to negotiate, so they are still an investor.
So we have a good vision of the very beginning. Can we switch now to the present? And can you give us like a snapshot of what is Bolt right now?
So yeah, first 3 years we did like 3 times the pivot as well. So initially we thought to work with taxi drivers, then we tried to work with taxi companies in Eastern Europe, and then the third pivot that actually, whether the growth came from, where we switched similar to Uber is the private driver model, or now the VTC kind of drivers. And in all the markets where we felt that it was big opportunity, so then we also switched to Africa. So yeah, we tried different things, struggled several years, and then mid 2016, 3 years later, we actually then found that, okay, that's the model that is growing, and yeah. And so again, 3 years later, today we operate in 36 markets.
36 markets in 36 countries?
36 countries, 150 cities, and in Europe and in Africa. This is roughly 50-50 between Europe and Africa.
And a little bit in Australia, in Asia, I've seen?
Yes, so Australia and Mexico as well, but we consider still Europe and Africa as our main markets, and our goal is to become the market leader here.
Okay, that's your focus. So how is it when we are an Estonian company to open a new country? How does it work? You have, I imagine, a very simple, not simple, but obvious guide with steps, what it is.
Yeah, I think we started to evaluating new cities, then we probably initially had, let's say, 4, 5, 6 criteria. So today we probably have 25. So we have learned a lot and failed in some cities and so on. So now we evaluate, of course, how big is the opportunity. So the bigger, it's actually, you might not think about it, but I don't know, launch Paris or launch, let's say, a small city in Estonia, you roughly need same kind of effort, because you need to hire people. You need them to, sometimes if it's a new market as well, you need to set up a company. You need to, build your terms, what are the terms and conditions for that market. So roughly the activities are the same, but the opportunity size is so much bigger. So it makes sense to take bigger cities first and smaller cities later on. So nowadays size is the most important. Then we look at regulation, competition, overall, are the drivers even willing to offer that kind of service? If there are 3 or 4 competitors on the market, then yeah, it's not the best market to enter. So the best situation for us, and where we have been pretty successful, is where Uber has been building the market. They are basically a monopoly, and then there is no second player. So these kind of markets have been most successful for us. So a lot of African markets were like that, a lot of markets in Eastern Europe, and yeah. So we go in as a second player. We know that the validation is done, and we try to offer better terms for both drivers and passengers, and then, yeah, be
That's
more.
interesting. They have paved the road for you, and you as a challenger, you can do like a leapfrog, I guess, also, because you don't have to repeat the same things, the same mistakes.
Because yeah, it's really like expensive and time consuming to build a new market. So especially
to evangelize, to educate.
The private driver model. So usually people were used to traditional taxis, a yellow car with a roof light. But now if you need to sit in someone else's private car, or you as a driver, how can I take a foreign person to my car? That's a big mind shift in the society. So it takes several years to convince people that it's working, it's trustworthy, you actually can make money from that service. You need to probably even convince regulators to change the law. So actually establishing that can cost a lot of money and time. So in that sense, we are grateful for Uber to doing a lot of work on that side.
So Bolt it's more than cab today. Scooters, not only scooters. You have
electric scooters. We have also bodas, or the motorcycle moped taxis in Africa, and now we have food delivery as well, which we just launched and expanding in Eastern Europe.
All right. So this works, adding so many products. If you have a vision, what's your vision? Like, how do you see mobility for Bolt?
I mean, our mission is to basically make transportation in city easy for all the people, and we see that today there is still so much inefficiency in the whole transportation space, and it's often people are wasting time driving their own car in the traffic jams, or then looking for parking spots and so on. So this is one part. The other part is like a lot more people could use also public transportation, but it's not very well integrated with all the shared mobility. So yeah, the longer term vision is like we could combine all of these transport methods into one platform, and then you say that, okay, I want to go from here to, let's say, to the airport, and recommends me like, okay, take the scooter, drive to a train station, then take a train, get there, or if you want to go faster or you need a private ride, then maybe I order a limousine or a taxi or whatever. So all kinds of different transportation methods combined. That's how we see the future.
How you see the future, depending on certain criteria. Is it winning time, ecological? So it is this kind of
faster,
criteria.
cheaper, ecological, whatever the passenger is preferring, they would have a choice for their need.
Okay, but you don't teach them how to choose.
Of course, we can help that as well, but we see that the society is already moving more like conscious about the nature and CO2 emissions and all of these kind of things. So we see that the demand is moving there. Young people are not buying cars. They don't even have driving license. So these are the global trends that are happening anyway. So yeah, we can impact it a bit, but we just need to see that where the opportunities come up and how we could solve these opportunities.
I've seen you have a green plan. Can you tell us what it is?
Yeah, so I think we were the first ride-hailing app to then neutralize all of our CO2 emissions. So all the Bolt rides that are in Europe, we measure the footprint of all the cars, and then we currently buy the CO2 emission offsets. So we invest in projects that are neutralizing the current footprint, but we are already working further on. So we want to reduce the number of trips happening in cars. That's why we try to suggest or recommend shorter trips to be taken with electric scooters or different other micromobility vehicles. And then in longer term, we work on electrifying our fleet. So to use renewable energy, to work with cities to establish charging networks, to work with the car manufacturers to make electric cars more affordable to our drivers and fleet partners, and look whatever other technologies are coming up, maybe hydrogen cars or other things that are happening, to just be open to all new technologies, how we can deploy them to make our cities more greener, and that's the vision.
So that's the vision, and you must have a good understanding of each culture, each country, city by city, and surprised to see that we have no longer e-scooter from Bolt in Paris. I think I have my answer, but I'd rather ask you why.
So yeah, when we launched, we actually were the first ride-hailing company to have cars and scooters in the same platform in globally. And then there was very few competitors when we launched, and then suddenly, I think in top time it was 13 companies offering scooters, and that wasn't even that much of a problem, but vandalism wasn't the main problem. So that so many scooters were stolen or thrown to the river or just whatever broken.
So French are rude.
I don't know. That's what.
We don't respect your.
That's what the data shows. I don't know what.
It doesn't happen like that in other cities. Tell me.
But I mean, there's another cause of that as well, because all the scooter companies initially used the scooters that you can also buy from the store, which is like a consumer product. So they were not built for a rental purpose. So by now, most companies have built new kind of scooters, which are their proprietary models. And there is basically no point of stealing them because you can't use them. But the previous models where you just take a hammer, you kick off the controller from it, and you can just use it as an electric scooter and without paying. So that was the initial business model. So yeah, then there was a point to steal it. But now when you have a totally proprietary scooter models, you have nothing to do with it without the network. So we see that is helping a lot already to decline the vandalism and overall, of course, the culture has also getting better. So now in Paris you have dedicated spots, so scooters are not lying on
True.
the pavements,
Yes.
and so the whole society is developing. They get used to new things. When the new technology comes, everyone doesn't know what to do with it, and some people need more time and education. So I think that now the situation is already more stabilized, and we are taking part of the tender in Paris. The deadline was today, so we hope that maybe we get the license and we can relaunch, because especially I think the value is that we have ride-hailing, but it would be a very good alternative to have electric scooters as well, especially on peak moments. People could, if they see that car traffic is so slow, they would have a choice. I don't know, I take public transport or I take a scooter for shorter rides, 1 to 3 kilometers. So that's why we think it's very good to have a platform that can offer you already a wider choice.
So you're one of the biggest company unicorn from Europe. I guess it's a good argument for the policymaker to respect you when they meet you. They are happy to I guess it's maybe tell me I'm wrong, but this is rather help a local player than not a local player. How does it work to convince policymakers, or to listen to them, to adapt to them? And I guess you have to adapt to each city and it's different. So how do you work on that? How big is your legal team? And
Yeah, I think that we have a regulatory policy team. I think it's probably now with 10 people, but actually by the time we reached the unicorn status, we had no lawyers and no policy people in the team. So the first lawyer joined the same day we had the announcement of funding, and we became a unicorn. So yeah, we were really, really frugal and tried to do most stuff in-house and very little outsourcing. So in that sense, it's part of our DNA. But now, we talk to many cities. We try to use best practices from different markets to share what is working in one market. We can share that experience in another. So for example, ride-hailing regulation. Estonia was one of the first markets in Europe to actually do a very new generation ride-hailing law. So we use that case study in other markets, and now a lot of Eastern European countries, Poland, Czech Republic, Croatia, have followed the same example and renewed their transportation laws. And or whatever, for scooters and other things, we can use the case studies. So Estonia has already very good electric cars charging networks. So we can use that kind of case study and data from there to explain to other cities. So for example, what should be the density of charging networks, how many charging points you need per electric car if they are taxi versus a private electric car, what is these kind of things. So we have a lot of data from countries we can share, and we see that the policymakers or city governments are open for that kind of knowledge, so that if they see that this is trustworthy information, we actually have practical experience, they are happy to listen and discuss together, because we also want to make cities better. Everyone understands that you can't squeeze more and more cars in the city center during the peak hour. It just doesn't fit. So you need to find reasonable alternative solutions. And if they see
do you think in the future people in the cities, they won't have cars anymore, but they will only share cars and ride e-scooters?
I mean,
in the future, I'm thinking in the next 10 years.
It must be a mix. You can't add triple the number of cars on the same streets. Everyone understands that doesn't work. So we need to collectively figure out a way. People still need to move. So what is the way we can help people move but keep it sustainable? So I think that we need clearly trustworthy and reliable and affordable alternatives to just having the cars. Or maybe we can put more people in the cars. Again, the pooling can work, but it can work on a larger scale. If the platform has too few rides in a city, that just as statistically you cannot pool people, you don't have enough people on the platform. So to do pooling efficiently, you need to be relatively big in terms of the city population and urban rides. So all of these kind of things start working at scale. So and you need to reach the scale, then you can do good stuff.
What's your relationship with your main investors? I'm thinking of the one who changed the game, Didi, and later Daimler, you said as well. How do you manage to keep your decisions independent from them?
We have been also lucky that the founders and the whole team, everyone has stock options who work for us. So the founders and team still have about half of the shares in the company. So we have the decision power. But on the other hand, our investors also believe in the same vision that we have. And so far we haven't messed up. We keep growing. The company is doing well. So yeah, they believe in our goals, in our roadmap, and we have the good way to ask them for experiences. Because yeah, Didi, when they invested, they were the biggest ride-hailing company in the world. They were doing 600 million rides a month, bigger than Uber and everywhere. So we have lots of good things to learn from them.
They are famous for being investing in like direct competitors to Uber, basically.
Yeah. They invested.
And they've been winning against them.
They were investing in all regional champions, so they would compete with Uber. That was the strategy. So yeah, but we managed to learn stuff from them, getting some good algorithms and learning how to do campaigns and so on. And yeah, with Daimler as well, they are one of the biggest car manufacturers in the world. So we can, and they also own different ride-hailing apps in Europe. So yeah, we can get some insight from them as well, and then bunch of financial investors that we have. So yeah.
If someone wants to work in your company, I mean, what are you looking for? What is the culture? What is the kind of behavior that you encourage when you work at Bolt?
Yeah, so now we are a bit bigger. The roles are getting a bit more specialized, but we still try to keep the same mindset. So we are not hiring the CV or the experience that much. We are still hiring the type of person, so that they are really eager to do something great. They, in general, believe in our mission. They are entrepreneurial. They understand what data means, and they are able to solve problems. So yeah, in general, the entrepreneurial mindset basically is what we're looking for, and we value definitely the mindset. And if the person is hungry to do good stuff, that is more important than saying that I'm a guru, I have done it 30 years, and everyone just listen to me. So we better prefer younger and more hungry guys. And I think at some point we looked at, we had about 60 people that started in customer support, or maybe it was even that last year, 60 people from customer support moved to other roles in the company. So I think that's a perfect example of a good person. So if you work in customer support, you do some routine thing, and we have guys saying that I learned some programming, I automated that task, and I basically automated myself out of that stupid job. And that's the perfect people we like. So if you see something you can fix, automate, that's very welcome. Why do you do a stupid job? Automate that, and the machine can do it, and you can do something smarter. So this is the perfect example of people that actually can inspire others and solve problems and show initiative and yeah, move on in do something more valuable. That's so yeah.
Cool. And how do you manage to, I guess you have the same trouble that we have in France. I mean, we really have just a little amount of women in tech. I mean, at Bolt, I guess you cannot change that. But how do you manage to at least encourage more women to join your company?
Yeah, it's somehow sad. I remember that in Skype times 2005, my
99%
my colleague in another team, it was the back-end team. They did like C++ coding, and he had a dream that I must find a women programmer to my team. And over, I think, 3 years, he interviewed multiple women, but didn't hire anyone. They were not good enough. And so he quit the company, and during the leaving party, everyone was still, you couldn't hire the first coding lady to your team. So he was so sad about it. But now, yeah, unfortunately, still the percentage is relatively low. So, but I still think it's somehow over mystified. So coding is not rocket science, and there are plenty of good women who could do it, but we need to change the perception in the society. And we actually have a very good initiative currently going on in Estonia to solve that. So it has been running now 1.5 years. It's for younger age girls from 7 to 13. And it's a technology kind of, technology meetup, or every week they come together and they solve things. And why is it important? Is that it's only for girls. And the studies now clearly show that when girls are doing things, they can do all the same stuff. But when they are doing it with boys, automatically girls step back and let the boys do the tech stuff. So that's like built in. But now, if the girls are doing it in their own group, then they all do it, and they get over this kind of threat or kind of worry, and they can easily do all that stuff. So, and the goal of that currently is that we have about 2,500 Estonian boys that go to robotics or programming, whatever it is called, the stuff they do besides school. And the goal with that girls program, by the end of next year, we have a plan to have 3,000 girls, same amount of girls in these technology meetups than we have boys. And first time we want to show that actually that will make a change in the society, that girls in their own groups, they can become more open to the programming and the real stuff. So this is a very interesting project going on.
We do a program dedicated for girls only. We understood that, even if I was against splitting, but I just realized that it was working.
Yeah. So I mean, okay, that's early stage. That probably takes 10 years until these girls get to the market to do programming and stuff. But yeah, you can do also other things. Just encourage them more, and then the same if we do now plan to do the coding school, then we try to also have at least 20-25% of applicants or acceptance. If they get through the logic exercises, we try to get more girls there. So yeah, you can.
You can implement some quota.
Okay.
Cool. Well, I think I've covered a lot of topics. It might be your turn to ask questions. So if you have questions, please raise your hands. Vlad will send you the mic. And maybe also, Vlad, you can share with us the tons of questions from the super cool people who are watching right now.
Yeah, so it's a mic. You catch it? Ready?
Look, it's funny.
Okay.
Just for the pleasure of watching it.
I'm Jean-Marie. I'm co-founder of a company called Connected Cycle. We help e-bike and e-scooters operators to recover totally lost vehicles. My question was, why did you decide to launch e-scooters fleets instead of staying a platform operator that could have aggregated e-scooters fleets?
You mean the question is why did we manage the fleets ourselves?
Yeah, because it's very different from being operator of a platform.
So
aggregating taxis and
so in case of ride-hailing, we are just the platform. We connect drivers and passengers. Yeah. But for scooters, we need to do all the operations, the charging, the warehouses, and so on. I think when we started the scooter business, I think there wasn't, or we were not aware that they are, companies willing to operate that. So we see that now there are some companies in Europe that are, let's say, focusing on that area, and they are doing it pretty well. So yeah, now we could consider of basically outsourcing the operations. But during that time, we were not aware of them, and we needed to do it ourselves. Maybe we also learned more what it means to operate the business and so on. So yeah, now I think we have got much more efficient than it was early days. But yeah, you need to learn a lot. If you start a new area, you don't have all the answers. So you need to try, figure out what's the best, and then go with the learnings.
Hi, Martin. My name is Thomas. I'm working as a project manager in urban code. So we are a French startup sharing cars between PHV drivers. So the main point is for a single car, few drivers that live in the same area and doesn't work at the same time share the same car. And so they can save up to 50% compared to a single person rental.
Mm.
So it was to introduce ourselves. Maybe we have things to do.
Cool. Yeah. Interesting. Any questions as well you would like to clarify? Seems like a valuable service. So how are you doing? Is it going well?
Yeah, it's going well. We have like 20 cars for the moment. We have between 2 and 3 drivers per car, and we rent it up to 100% of the weekly hours.
Okay. Sounds like a good idea.
Hi, I'm a product manager at We Maintain. I was wondering, how do you know when it's the good time to launch a new product or services? I mean, even though you have a product market fit, can you think of any case where it wouldn't be a good idea to launch as app?
Launch something new. You mean
Yeah.
like a new product line or existing feature or what?
A new product or opening a new market. And I have a second related question. How do you, when launching a new product or new service, how do you handle the risk of defocus?
Yeah, that's the second one is challenging as well. But yeah, the first one is, of course, most companies don't have unlimited funding. So maybe the US and Chinese unicorns, or they have billions of dollars, but mostly in Europe, companies have limited funding. So you always need to choose. So what do you do if you focus on your core market? And for us, it's ride-hailing. We have had many ideas to do side projects all the time, but if we just don't have funding to hire more engineers to build something, or even product managers. So I think that we have actually product management team for the last 1.5 or 2 years before that. Markus, my brother, was just the only product manager in a company, and whatever, we had few designers, but we had no product managers. So we had to do everything on our own. So yeah, I think it's just a resource question at first. So do you even have capacity to consider anything else? So if you reach certain level and you are very sure that it's a relatively good opportunity, then yeah, then you can start building a new product line. For us, it was scooters at first, and then food delivery second, and so on. And second, yeah, the challenge of focus, what the company is doing, so you won't lose a focus. That's again a big challenge. And luckily we have head of product management has been studying that area a lot. He had also a single product company, and he tried to do similar kind of side projects. And at some point he saw that, whoa, it was almost killing his company, because the sales team didn't know, should I sell product A or product B, and all of that. So now we try to keep these teams as separate as possible. So basically they have their own management, their own goals, their own engineering, their own product. So it's basically an independent organization within the company. So we only share some of the shared things, like maybe accounting or fraud team or payments, so that they have, let's say, unified APIs that the others can use, but try to keep it as separate as possible. And goal-wise as well, we have one big company goal where we are moving, but then each of these product teams, they have their own sub-goals and they work towards that. So that's our current approach. We are not very sure how well is it going in general, but currently it seems it's okay. So that, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But if others have good tips about it, you're welcome to share as well. So that is definitely one of the biggest challenges for companies doing different products.
Thank you. Edouard Lavidal, co-founder of 2 blockchain-related startups, TrackX and Postbakers. One of which is actually getting registered in Estonia. You've rebranded Bolt quite a few times. Taxify, TXFy, Bolt. Do you have any advice to share to us founders here on how to conduct successful rebranding?
I think it's the question of when you do it. And initially when we started in Estonia, we were growing, we were called M-Taxo, and we were really worried that, whoa, we had like few thousand users, and what happens if we rebrand to Taxify? What do they think? And so on. So some guys said, don't worry, in 2 months' time, if you keep growing, the majority of people in 2 months' time didn't even know that you have more new users of the new brand that you had the old one. And the same happened with now a year ago when we rebranded to Bolt. So during that time, we probably had like, 15 million customers. 1 month, we had a small decline of user signups, but the second month already we peaked more than the first before rebranding. So there was a small bump, but overall, we have added much more users now in the last year than we had before. So when they don't know about anything about Taxify. So if in 5 years' time we have 100 million or whatever customers, then if they would only know our new name, but that maybe works if you have a good growth funnel working already. If you have challenges on that, then maybe it's more risky, but overall, I think if you believe that the new name is better, it adds value, all of that, customers like it, and the overall your product is good, then I wouldn't worry that much. But on the other hand, if the old name works, then why should you? If you don't have a strong reason, then don't bother. It's also a distraction from your building your business. You need to do legal stuff, trademarks, other things. So if you can, then avoid it. If you really must do it, then try to do it well.
And why did you need it with from Taxify to Bolt? What does it mean, Bolt, for you?
We had like 400 names. Everyone in the company could add a name in the spreadsheet, and we had like huge discussions on that. But we just felt that we outgrew the name. So initially, Taxify was a very good name when we operated with taxis, and then with private drivers, we thought that we Taxify the private cars. But when we started adding new services and looking at the future as well, then we understood that, okay, this is not really a name we can go whatever the next 10 years, and then it's better to rebrand earlier than later. So, and it means the Lightning, which is fast, electric, and all of that. And we just thought that we need a new identity, and it's also now green, more sustainable, and all of that going together with our green plan and things. So that's why it's
coherent.
Decided to actually take the effort. It has been quite an effort to do that.
For me, it was hard to remember because I used to have Taxify on my phone. I forgot I have to type Bolt now. I
think that in Africa we still have many fans that call us Taxify. They haven't given up in a year. We even have songs. People have done songs. So if you
Taxify?
Yeah, I think cool. if you look at Spotify or YouTube, you can even find the Taxify songs. So people have some people are really engaged with the old brand.
Yes.
Hey, so my name is Lorenz. I'm very interested in the intersection between entrepreneurship, new markets, and regulations. So actually, I founded an association to mutualize policy on legal cannabis, and I think that the closest parallel of this would be actually the mobility services, because it's both tangible, and you have to create the market, educate the consumer and the policymaker at the same time. So I'm very curious. You mentioned a bit the licensing process. Can you share some lessons, how do you collaborate with your competitors? Do you plan to do this? And how do you reach out to policymakers or authorities? What were the really concrete strategies at each stage? Because we know that, you mentioned the application process, but I guess it took you a lot of months to do this. And how did you operate in different countries? Because this is a huge risk, I think, regulatory and compliance. So Can you share some very specific stories, please?
So yeah, when 2015, it was the first year we started using private drivers, and that was still a period in Europe, especially in Eastern Europe, where there was only traditional taxi regulation, and but yeah, Uber started to, let's say, expand with that private driver model. We saw that okay, nothing really happens, no one's really enforcing it much, so we jumped on the same train and started using that model, and but we were still very much alert, so that okay, if something happens, we need to do something. We started early discussions with the policymakers. I think Estonia was one of the first. Latvia, Lithuania followed as countries to think that okay, this is something that's happening on the streets. There are exactly not many issues. It's working fine, but it's not exactly defined in taxi regulation. So it's a new service that was invented after the regulation was created. So yeah, if you have reasonable politicians, they understand that tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people are using that service. The model is working fine. Companies are using self-regulation. So we were doing criminal background checks ourselves of drivers, even though that wasn't required, but we wanted to provide a decent service. So we don't want the criminal to be in a car and then you have a front page news that the criminal did something crazy and it happened on our platform. So we understood that. So if you have like decent self-regulation, then yeah, you can help. And we thought that yeah, by proving in real life that this kind of new service works, it's easier to convince politicians to create regulation rather than prohibiting the service and then hypothetically going to politicians and say that if we would have a service like that, it would be good for the society. So I mean, convincing that way, we felt it's much lower than actually running the service on a good quality. And then if you have hundreds of thousands of people using it, politicians understand, okay, yeah, seems a good thing, and why do we even need a regulation is usually to protect the passengers. So what challenges the passengers and drivers have, then you create regulation to mitigate those risks. But if the service was working several years, there wasn't too many risks, then politicians were more open to create a reasonable regulation. So that was maybe the main thing. But of course, we had like several times the ethical discussions that, yeah, that service we are doing, this is not regulated. Some people say it's against the taxi law. So what should we do? Like, but we believe that in terms of the good cause and if first markets get regulated, the new model, the others would follow, and that's what has happened. So yeah, in some markets, of course, the service have been shut down. Uber have been kicked out in several markets. So lucky for us, we haven't had any such markets, but yeah, Denmark or Hungary or whatever, several markets where this kind of peer-to-peer or private driver service have been closed as well. So in one sense, maybe being a second mover, it's a bit easier. So you see how the regulators are treating that service and does it even make sense to go to these markets. So has avoided us maybe from these early mistakes. But yeah, we have been cooperating with in different markets with different competitors, and now some countries we have also created associations of, let's say, ride-hailing association, and now it's the scooter operators associations have been created in several markets, and now also pan-European ones are done in order, because yeah, us as an operator, we actually want reasonable regulation. We don't want over-regulation, but reasonable regulation is actually needed, because when you operate in gray area, it's much riskier to do investments as well. You never know when the regulator is, okay, now let's stop it. So if you have regulation, you know you are compliant, then it's much better to also do investments. You can do predictive, whatever, growth plans and so on. But so yeah, I believe that having a reasonable regulation is needed, but there's always a risk that you get over-regulated, and that is what you need to explain to the politicians and say that, okay, whose interests are you protecting? Is that extra regulation in the interest of, let's say, passenger, or is it in an interest of a few taxi company owners whom are you actually protecting, and do every one of these need protection? So yeah, that is usually the main questions you need to ask. And if there are reasonable people, then you can figure out a reasonable way as well. But yeah, if it gets over-regulated, then it's a challenge. It probably stops the industry or innovation or any other thing. So yeah.
Any other question? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Zenia. I have a question about women's safety. In a lot of countries, I don't know anything about Bolt, but Uber's had issues. Certain other private companies have had issues of sexual harassment and other things. And alongside, there are certain companies that hire women drivers for women who are probably traveling back late at night, things like that. So do you have any such thing, measures that you would take or have taken in the past to ensure this doesn't happen with your company or something related to that?
Yeah, so of course we try to take every reasonable measure. So it's the background check, or nowadays in most markets, it's actually that the government is issuing licenses for private drivers. So it's government is doing the basic checks. So yeah, we can't do on top of that. Right? If government has validated that that person is suitable to offer the service, then we usually trust it. Then we use the rating system and all of that. But maybe what has happened is that some of the competitors, they try to hide the incidents, and we never do that. So whenever there is an incident, and of course it could be like people are related or offering service to another person, some percent of people might, whatever, something happens and it's an incident, then we have a clear policy that we cooperate with the authorities. We clearly want to find out what happened, and if some person did something wrong, then they need to be responsible for that. And we want to show it clearly that these are the issues, and that's also a good example for the others. So, and yeah, I think these are the main principles. Of course, we can invent different other kind of safety measures as well, the SOS buttons and different other things that we do depending of the risk rate of the market. But yeah, unfortunately, you never can be 100% sure, but you can take reasonable steps from your side to mitigate the risk as small as possible. And then if something happens, really be transparent and show that that's the situation. So.
No more questions? No? Vlad, do you have questions?
So we have one from Hopin. It's what are the criteria you check before opening a new market? I understand that markets where Uber was first are easier to enter, but what are other key metrics to analyze?
Size, you said, I remember.
I think I discussed some of it. So basically the size of the market, regulation, competition, overall maybe average ride of the price, average price of the ride, and
if it's strategic for you to start by this new market to grab the rest of the market, from one city to the rest of the market.
Yeah, so usually also we start in a capital city or the biggest city of the country, and then if we have a good position there, then we start expanding to the secondary cities. So what else is important? Yeah, I would say this opportunity, regulation, competition is the maybe top three, and the rest comes like, I don't know, once we opened in an African market where we saw that, okay, seems like a good opportunity, but then it came out that only rich people had cars in that market. And so although there was a big demand for ride-hailing service, there wasn't enough cars for people who would be willing to become drivers. And we couldn't get enough drivers in the system to order a decent service. So we got some drivers, but demand was so much higher so that the search coverage, which we call how many people actually can see available driver, that was like 20 or 30%. So 2/3 of the customers just couldn't get the cars. And and we were still relatively small company during that time, so we couldn't, I don't know, finance the cars or something like that. So we had to pull out of that market, and then we entered a few years later when the market had developed to a position that there was already car financing and stuff was more developed. So there are all kinds of these criteria that you maybe don't know at the start if you haven't had that obstacle. But in one city you see it, okay, next time you add it to the checklist and you see the ratio of different things. So now I'm saying we have probably about 25 criteria to evaluate per city.
How long does it take to open a new market for you now?
It really depends of the regulation. So in London, the platform application or licensing could take 1-2 years. In some cities where there is not much regulation, hiring people, training drivers, I don't know, establishing a company, maybe 1-2 months. So really depends of the market and regulation.
1-2 months. Any other question, Vlad?
No, because like the link broke at the end, so we only had time before it broke for one question.
All right. Oh, Opin, we love you, but the product needs to be a bit enhanced as any product. Great. So I think it's time to cut the mic and to thank you officially.
Thank you.
Que la famille.